Morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Margaret.
Can you tell us who in the Biden administration has been in touch with Russian leadership?
Well, I instructed my own team at the president's behest to engage with the Russians, first and foremost, to make sure that they understood their responsibilities in terms of protecting our own personnel, ensuring their safety and well-being, as well as any American citizens in Russia. So a number of people have engaged to make sure that the Russians got that message.
Is the U.S. ready for further unrest in Russia and the scenario that Vladimir Putin does not remain in power?
Margaret, this is an unfolding story, and I think we're in the midst of a moving picture. We haven't seen the last act. We're watching it very closely and carefully. But just step back for a second and put this in context. 16 months ago, Russian forces were on the doorstep of Kyiv in Ukraine, thinking they'd take the city in a matter of days, thinking they would erase Ukraine from the map as an independent country. Now, over this weekend, they've had to defend Moscow, Russia's capital, against mercenaries of Putin's own making. Prigozhin himself, in this entire incident, has raised profound questions about the very premises for Russia's aggression against Ukraine in the first place, saying that Ukraine or NATO did not pose a threat to Russia, which is part of Putin's narrative, and it was a direct challenge to Putin's authority. So this raises profound questions. It shows real cracks. We can't speculate or know exactly where that's going to go. We do know that Putin has a lot more to answer for in the weeks and months ahead.
But is the U.S. prepared for the potential of the fall of the Putin government, and is their nuclear stockpile, the largest in the world, secure?
We always prepare for every contingency. In terms of what happens in Russia, it's an internal matter for the Russians to figure out. Of course, when we're dealing with a major power, and especially a major power that has nuclear weapons, that's something that's of concern, something we're very focused on. We haven't seen any change in Russia's nuclear posture. There hasn't been any change in ours, but it's something we're going to watch very, very carefully.
Vladimir Putin is appearing on television this morning, but it appears to have been pre-recorded. Do you know the whereabouts of Vladimir Putin right now? Is he in Moscow?
I don't want to speculate on that or what information that we have. Again, we're watching that carefully. I think one of the things this tells you is that we still don't have finality in terms of what was actually agreed between Prigozhin and Putin. I suspect that we're going to learn more in the days and weeks ahead about what deal they struck. The president brought together not only the National Security Cabinet yesterday, he brought together the leaders of our key allies and partners. He instructed all of us to do the same. We have tremendous unity of purpose and unity of action when it comes to supporting Ukraine, and that's where our focus is.
But as you just said, Prigozhin drew into question the very premise for Vladimir Putin's war. So
that's right.
Do the Wagner fighters return to the fight in Ukraine? Do we know?
Too soon to tell what's going to happen to the Wagner forces, whether they go back to the fight. I mean, it was extraordinary that they were moving out of Ukraine and into Russia. But it's too soon to tell whether they're going to go back into the fight as Wagner, whether they get integrated into regular Russian forces, what this means for Wagner in other parts of the world. I mean, keep in mind, both Putin and Prigozhin are responsible for committing terrible acts in Ukraine against Ukrainian civilians, but also, in the case of Wagner, in country after country in Africa, wherever Wagner is, death and destruction and exploitation follow. But all of this is likely to unroll in the coming days and the coming weeks, to the extent that it presents a real distraction for Putin and for Russian authorities, that they have to look at sort of mind their rear even as they're trying to deal with the counteroffensive in Ukraine. I think that creates even greater openings for the Ukrainians to do well on the ground.
Well, as you just indicated, Yevgeny Prigozhin